Most of you have heard of AWS, Azure, cloud computing, the cloud, and it's such a buzzword that it's been around for a few years now. In this video, I'm going to demystify what cloud computing is, and that's going to be very basic so that you really understand what cloud computing is all about and why is it that AWS is one of the top, if not the top, cloud computing company. All right, let's go ahead and do a deep dive into cloud computing. All right, welcome again. I'm excited you're here as always. And now we're going to look into cloud computing. So we're going to look at what is cloud computing and also look at the evolution of cloud computing because I think it's important for us to see how it came about. So what is cloud computing? I think we need to go back and look at how traditional IT used to be, or still is in some ways, but we're going to go back when things were a little bit different. So let's review how a website works. So first of all, we have a client somewhere needs to connect to a server. Okay. So the client in this case sends a request to the server. In this case, it's going to be via a network. That could be the internet, of course. And then the server sends back a response through that same network. So we know that server is just a computer somewhere that has a lot of power. So a server has the following components. A server has a CPU, the central processing unit. So this is the place where the processing happens. So the processing of information and computation, okay? And then a server also has RAM. This is what we call random access memory. So this is just fast memory. It's fast, easy to access memory, which is needed by the CPU to carry on its tasks. But also a server has to store data. So server has storage. So here we're storing information for long term. In this case, we also have database. So this now is a little bit different because databases are also storage. However, these are storage that has this structured way of storing that data for a long term. A server has to have a network, right? It has to also be able to communicate with other servers if need be, which means we need to have routers, switches, DNS servers, and so many other things there. So there's a lot when it comes to a server, but these are the basics. So let's look at traditional IT and some issues that come with it. So in traditional IT, you would need to buy servers. So if you have a house or an office, you actually have to go and buy servers. And then once you buy those servers, you have to make sure to connect them, provision them, and do all sorts of things. So in this case, if you needed, say, a different type of server, then you would go and buy more servers, which, of course, as you know, that would add more cost. Having servers that you are taking care of, it's very inflexible because they're hard to scale since you have to buy more hardware and software as you add more servers. And also, it's a very slow process because once you have your own servers, you have to deploy new applications and requires a lot of careful planning and execution. And also to make sure that your servers are healthy and are not destroyed in case of earthquake or fire or floods or any other disaster out there, you have to buy and set up disaster recovery. Let's talk about security measures. Very hard to set up and extremely expensive. Limited remote access capabilities, as well as it requires ongoing maintenance, right? So these are the problems with traditional IT. You can still do it. Some companies still do it, but the overhead is really high. The cloud is solution. This is when we go to cloud computing, because now with cloud computing, we are solving the problems that we have with traditional IT because we are completely removing all of the roadblocks and inefficiencies in the traditional IT as I've shown you. So cloud computing is a model of delivering computing services as servers, storage, database, networking, software, analytics, and intelligence over the internet. This is amazing because now it enables on-demand access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources. What that means is that if you need something, if you need a server, you don't have to go buy one. You just rent one and the provider will take care of everything. And the great thing is that now you can rapidly provision, you can set up, roll one up and release within minimal management effort, as opposed to having to go and buy servers and go through the process of setting it up and secure it and maintaining it and all of that stuff. And the great thing about cloud computing is that it has a different model. Now is pay as you go, as you need it. So you just pay what you use and that's it. If you want 10 servers, you can go ahead and rent 10 servers. If you want scale down to 2, you can also do that. You can shut one down if you're done with it. You can do that. You can pause, you can restart, and you can provision exactly what you need. Not less, not more. That makes a very efficient usage of resources and, of course, cost effective. Security measures are taken care of. You don't have to take care of that because the cloud provider, as I said before, will take care of all of that. Disaster recovery is also taken care of by the cloud provider. You can access your resources anywhere, anytime. And of course, you also have access to storage, databases, and a plethora of many other services. So now you don't need to do all of the work that you needed to do in the traditional IT. You just push that to the cloud provider. All you need to do is just go ahead and manage your servers on the cloud. That is the beauty of cloud computing. Now back to the previous example with traditional IT, it's important to remember that we still have servers, but instead of having the servers in our house, our office, or our corporation, we have all of them in the cloud, which is then accessible at any time that we want. So these servers have all of the resources that are available to us. So we can only focus on growing our business. And now we don't have to focus on maintaining servers and do all of that work needed with having your own servers. So the cloud service platform can take care of all of that for us. That is the beauty of cloud computing. Okay, so there's still servers. It's just that the servers are somewhere else that we don't have to maintain them. Now let's look at the traditional versus modern IT. Think of traditional IT as you owning a car. So if you own a car, you can go ahead and buy a car, of course. With that comes a lot of responsibilities. So when you buy it, you have to insure it, you have to maintain it, you have to handle all other responsibilities, just like traditional IT. So when we talk about cloud computing, it's like using ride-sharing service such as Uber, Lyft. What happens now is that all you have to do is just request a ride whenever you need it, and you pay per ride. So cloud computing really lets you access computing services and resources as needed, and you pay just what you need to use when you need it. And when you think in those terms, then you can see the advantages that we have between traditional IT, which is like owning a car, versus cloud computing, which is like using ride-sharing service. Cloud services is everywhere. You've been using cloud applications that are powered by cloud computing platforms all along. It's just that maybe you didn't realize this. An example would be Google Drive, Dropbox, Zoom, Netflix, and so many others. Cloud services are literally everywhere, and we use them every day. And that should show you how important cloud computing is in our everyday life. Now, there are many cloud service platforms, but there are few that are leading the space, right? So cloud service platforms or providers. So we have Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, AWS, Amazon Web Services, which is what we're going to be focusing on in this course, as well as IBM Cloud. Like I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on AWS in this course, but the principles are still the same in any of these other cloud services or platforms. I hope you now have a good idea on what cloud computing is, as well as the differences between traditional IT versus the modern IT, I would say, which is cloud computing. So in the next videos, we're going to start diving into AWS and learning all we need to know about AWS. Wonderful. I'll see you in the next lecture. All right, so up till now, we've been talking about cloud computing in general, and now we're going to introduce AWS, so Amazon Web Services in particular. So we're going to be focusing on AWS. AWS stands for Amazon Web Services. AWS is a cloud service provider, provides, in this case, a lot of different services that powers many small to large businesses and companies all over the world. So there are many services that AWS provides. Some of them are as follows. So these are the categories of services. So we have compute, we have databases, analytics, networking, development tools for developers, management tools, IoT, Internet of Things, enterprise applications. So really, AWS comes to simplify IT as opposed to having to go back to traditional IT. With AWS, companies, businesses are given a lot of more flexibility to leverage cloud computing at a very higher level. So that is the beauty of AWS. Now let's look at a little bit of the timeline so that we have some context on when this all started. First of all, I have limited the timeline here just to be focused. It is actually known that AWS was first created, of course, by Amazon, the big company, for internal usage. So AWS, Amazon created this cloud platform for themselves so they can use it, and they still do actually themselves. Okay, so in 2002, that's when AWS platform was launched, the Amazon S3 Simple Storage Service, which we'll talk about in this course, was the first one that was launched. Okay, so now developers had access to that service as well as many other features that Amazon had put together. In 2014, that's when the SQS, this is another service called Simple Queue Service, was launched. So in 2006, that's when Amazon decided to launch AWS officially to the world. And also they launched a lot of different cloud services, including EC2, which we'll talk about, as well as S3 for everybody. Okay, this is an important date because this is the beginning of the revolution of cloud, right? The cloud revolution. So the certification program allowed people to be able to get certified so that it can show employers or potential employers or anybody else that they know how to use AWS services to architect solutions. In 2014, AWS Lambda was introduced. This is what we call the serverless computing service, which is an important milestone, and that started a big shift in cloud computing. I limited this timeline so that way we can focus on the most important points. Every year, Amazon and AWS are still innovating and adding more features to the cloud computing, to AWS. It's important to know that AWS is not the only cloud service provider. There are many others, but AWS is one of the leaders. So I just want to show you this quadrant, this figure here, so you can see where Amazon services or AWS stands with other services, other cloud service providers. The challengers, top left, leaders, niche players, as you see here, as well as visionaries. And you can see that in this quadrant here, leaders, you see that Amazon is way at the top, right? Followed by Microsoft, followed by Google, Cloud in this case, and IBM. So this quadrant here, this is the leaders quadrant. And then, of course, we have other challengers here. You can see Alibaba Cloud and Baidu. These are other cloud services that are not used as much or not known as much, especially in the United States, but in many other places they are actually used. Okay, and we have the niche players, Huawei Cloud, Tencent, Oracle, and Clarify. Right, so this is a different quadrant. H2O.ai, which is in the visionaries quadrant. Okay, so this just gives you an idea of where things are. Imagine that this organization here needs to host a website. They have a website where they sell toys. Let's call that toy store. So with AWS, you can go ahead and create the infrastructure, the cloud infrastructure that is needed to run such store, such website. Okay, so you can say, I want certain resources that will host my website. So you can say, I want EC2, which is just a virtual server. We'll talk about that. I want storage because you want to save those products in a database somewhere, and many other resources such as images or videos, whatever it is that you need. So you can ask for those resources. That way your users can just access this store and AWS will take care of all of this for you. Okay. And you will see later that it's way easier for you to then, if you need to increase the cloud computing power, it's way easier doing that on AWS because that is automatic. If you have more customers coming in from 100 to 10 million people, AWS will be able to handle that demand for you. Now, I'm going to show you another great perk you get with AWS. So AWS is what it's called a global infrastructure network. With that, what that means is as follows. This network is organized into geographical areas called regions. So in this case, we'll have something like region A and region B. Inside of these regions, we have what they call availability zones. What these mean is that these are different data centers that are inside of a certain region. So we have region A with 1, 2, 3 availability zones, just like data center, as I said, where we can have different resources there. Okay, and region B, the same thing. And these availability zones are actually connected to each other so they can communicate. But the idea here is that each AZ or availability zone, it's its own entity. So it is an isolated location with redundant power, networking, and cooling to endure fault tolerance. In this case, in case something happens to any of these available zones, for instance, this goes down, then this one will take over. If this goes down, this other one will take over, and so forth. So this makes sure that therefore your applications, your websites, or resources are always online and working. And that is just amazing and a very important aspect. So imagine you know where your target audience is. So let's say your target audience is in region A. One of the biggest perks in AWS Cloud is that you can actually say, because I know that region A, this is where my target audience is, you can put all of the resources of your website in that region because this region is the closest to your target customers. That's where you would host your website. Okay. Why is this so important? Well, this is important because it reduces latency. So you will have faster website operation because the people who want to access the website are closer or are in that region. So that way it's faster for them to access those resources on the website. There's also potential cost variation based on this region, which means you may end up paying less since you're closer to your target audience. Because think about it, if your audience is, for instance, far away than where your resources, your website is located, that means it will take longer and needs a little bit more computing power to serve your users. Your target audience is not closer to where your website is hosted. So that is one of the biggest benefits. Now, the other benefit here is that when we talk about regions and availability zones, this means the website's resources can be actually spread across multiple AZ, multiple availability zones within those chosen regions. What that means is that you have your website, and your website could have a resource A here, in this zone 2 and other resources in zone 1 and maybe more resources in this different zone. Now this goes back to that flexibility we talked about, right? Because now if something happens to availability zone 2, what will happen then availability zone 3 will kick on and still your website was still running because resources are still being used from a different availability zone. Okay, so this is what I call utilization of availability zones. So would spread website resources across multiple AZs in the chosen region. The benefit is that we have an increase in reliability. So as I said, if one AZ goes down, the website continues to work, to operate from other AZ without any interruptions or minimal interruptions. Now, why is AWS so important? First of all, AWS is the market leader and dominance. So AWS is one of the largest, most widely adopted and known cloud platforms. And the reason they are a leader is because they are continuously innovating. They're adding new things to their services. They're staying ahead of the competitors and they're really driving industry trends. AWS is cost effective in many ways because you can actually just pay as you go. The pricing model is pay as you go. You just use what you need, you pay what you've used, and that's it. The customers have a lot of control in reducing their cost. And with that, they provide a lot of different tools. And one of the main tools they provide are monitors. So allows customers to monitor and manage costs, which helps businesses staying on budget. It's also compliance with regulations because sometimes different applications must be compliant to GDPR or HIPAA if you're talking about medical related applications, and AWS takes care of all of that. All right, so now you know what AWS is, why is it so important, why a lot of people are using, companies, institutions, governments use AWS. Even Amazon itself uses AWS. So you can see how important AWS is in the cloud space. All right, so I'll see you in the next lecture where we'll continue talking about AWS. So we know that AWS is a global infrastructure. So it's well connected. So I'm going to go ahead and show you all of the regions on the map. So we're going to go to this link here. Okay, so you can see here, if you go to this link, you can see that we have a few things here. So here it says regions and availability zones. So we have different regions, the actual regions. And I know that in the example, I just use A, Z, or A and B regions, but that was just to show you the concept of regions and availability zones. So we have North America. So if you click on this, each one of these tabs here, you're going to go to different regions and availability zones. So the North America, you can see this whole map, and at the bottom here, you can see that we have the actual written availability zones and regions. So we can see North America, we have US West, Oregon, but I like to look at the map. So if you hover over, you can see we have this availability zone 3. This is the AWS Gov Cloud in US West. So that is the naming of all of these different regions. Okay, so we have Northern California, we have Oregon with their own availability zone. Okay, so you can see there, and if you hover over, we have this Canada West region that is coming soon, and in the east coast of the US, we have a few as well. So you hover over, there's this Canada Central at the top there. This is for North America, of course, so that means United States and Canada. All right, there we go. Now, if we go to a different region, click here, this is South America, we see that we have one region in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And that has 3 availability zones in that region. Okay, and it says here coming soon. So if there was a red dot, that will tell us that there's something coming soon. So if you continue for Europe, you can see we have different regions as well. Spain, as well Paris, and Frankfurt, London, and so forth. All right, you keep going, Middle East, we have those different regions there. As you see, go to Africa. At this point, there's just one. In Cape Town, Asia Pacific, you can see we have all of these other regions that are all over across. And we have some that are coming soon. Australia, New Zealand, we have 2 in Australia. And we have 1 coming soon in Auckland. Okay, so this is a good place for you to go and start looking, and if you want to see what's going on, the availability zones as well as regions, this is a really good visual representation of what we just talked about. I hope you enjoyed this video where I go through cloud computing, and I hope it opened up a little bit more about cloud computing, and I hope you're also seeing the importance of understanding cloud computing, because it doesn't matter how wonderful of a programmer you are or you're aspiring to be, you need to understand technology. In essence, you need to learn to become a well-rounded developer. That is the whole point of all of this. So if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe, because I will always create content that is helpful, hopefully to you, and content that really hopefully helps you become the best developer, the best software developer there is, because my goal is to make you a well-rounded developer, not only about coding skills, which is very important, but also understand the bigger picture of software development. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you next.